What if the person you trusted to come home never made it back? What if the last place anyone saw him was a remote island surrounded by dark water? And days later, his body was found, but even an autopsy couldn't explain exactly how he died. This is the disturbing mystery surrounding 18-year-old Nolan Wells, a young man whose 4th of July celebration ended in tragedy and left behind a series of questions that investigators still have to answer. On July 4, 2026, Nolan Wells traveled with friends to Horn Island, a remote barrier island off the coast of Mississippi. For many people, Independence Day is a time for fireworks, parties, music, and spending time with friends. But for Nolan and his family, that holiday would become a date they could never forget. According to the information that has been made public, Nolan was part of a group that traveled by boat to Horn Island. The plan was supposed to be simple: enjoy the holiday, spend time together, and eventually return home. But somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong. At some point during the trip, Nolan became separated from the group. The other people eventually returned by boat, but Nolan was not with them. He was reportedly left behind on the island. And this is where the story begins to become increasingly difficult to understand. Because once the group left, what happened to Nolan? Was he still alive when the boat departed? Did he know that he was being left behind? Did he try to contact anyone for help? And if he did, who knew what was happening? These questions have become central to the investigation because the timeline of those final hours could hold the key to understanding Nolan's death. Search efforts were launched after it became clear that Nolan was missing. But the search ended in the most devastating way possible. Nolan's body was eventually discovered near Horn Island. A family that had been hoping to find their son alive was suddenly forced to face the unimaginable reality that he was gone. But even after Nolan was found, investigators still did not have a clear answer about how he died. In many cases, an autopsy can provide a straightforward explanation. It can reveal whether a person died from drowning, blunt force trauma, a medical emergency, or another identifiable cause. But Nolan's case was different. An independent autopsy arranged by his family reportedly could not determine the cause and manner of death. The official classification was undetermined. Those two words may sound simple, but they carry enormous significance. They mean investigators were unable to establish with enough certainty exactly what happened to Nolan. Was it an accident? Was it drowning? Was someone else involved? At that point, none of those possibilities could be definitively confirmed. And for Nolan's family, that uncertainty made an already devastating loss even harder to accept. Because when a loved one dies, families naturally want answers. They want to know what happened, where it happened, and why. But in Nolan's case, the questions continued to grow. His family began raising concerns about the circumstances surrounding the night he disappeared. They reportedly pointed to inconsistencies in accounts from people connected to the trip and questioned whether the full story had been told. As the family's concerns grew, they sought outside help. High-profile civil rights attorney Ben Crump became involved, bringing even more attention to the case. His involvement signaled that Nolan's family was not willing to simply accept an unexplained death without demanding a deeper investigation. The family wanted evidence examined carefully. They wanted the timeline reconstructed, and they wanted investigators to determine whether there was information that had been overlooked. One of the most important pieces of evidence reportedly being examined is a distress call connected to the boat. In a case like this, audio evidence can be extremely valuable. Experts may be able to analyze exactly what was said, who was speaking, when the call was made, and what the voices in the background might reveal. Even a few seconds of audio can sometimes help investigators establish a timeline or challenge an existing version of events. The question is whether this distress call can help explain what happened during Nolan's final hours. Was someone trying to get help? Was Nolan mentioned? Did the call reveal panic or confusion? And could the recording contradict anything witnesses later told investigators? These are the kinds of questions that experts may be trying to answer. At the same time, investigators have reportedly examined information about Nolan's condition before his disappearance. Some witnesses allegedly told authorities that Nolan had consumed a significant amount of alcohol. That detail has attracted attention because alcohol can affect judgment, coordination, and decision-making. But it is important to understand that alcohol consumption by itself does not explain how someone died. It does not automatically prove drowning, accidental death, or anything else. Investigators must determine what happened based on the complete body of evidence. And that evidence includes witness statements, physical evidence, forensic findings, phone records, audio recordings, and the official autopsy. Every piece matters because the timeline is everything. If Nolan was alive when the group left the island, what happened afterward? If he was already in danger, did anyone know? If he tried to contact someone, was his call answered? And if someone was responsible for what happened, could the evidence prove it? These questions have made Nolan's case one of the most closely watched unexplained deaths connected to the Mississippi Gulf Coast in recent months. Then came another major development. The official state autopsy was completed. For Nolan's family, this could have been the moment when the mystery finally began to unravel. The autopsy had the potential to provide answers that the independent examination could not. But the public was not immediately given those answers. Instead, the results remained confidential as the investigation continued, with the findings reportedly expected to be presented to a grand jury. That development created even more anticipation. A grand jury can review evidence and determine whether there is enough information to move forward with criminal charges. But until that process is complete, the public does not know what investigators believe happened, and that means speculation continues to fill the gap left by the missing answers. Some people believe Nolan may have drowned. Others question whether the circumstances point to something more complicated. But right now, neither theory has been publicly proven. This is why it is so important to separate facts from rumors. There is currently no publicly confirmed conclusion that Nolan was murdered. There is also no publicly confirmed conclusion that his death was simply an accident. The official answer remains unknown, and that uncertainty is exactly what has kept attention focused on the case. The investigation has also been complicated by reports of threats involving people connected to the story. Authorities have reportedly made arrests related to threatening behavior, but those arrests should not be interpreted as arrests for Nolan's death. As of the latest publicly available information, no one has been publicly charged with causing Nolan's death. That distinction matters because when a case receives widespread attention online, rumors can spread faster than facts. A person mentioned in a social media post can quickly become a suspect in the eyes of the public, even when investigators have not said that person committed any crime. For Nolan's family, the focus remains on finding the truth rather than on online speculation. They want investigators to examine every detail and determine what happened to their son. They want to know why he was left on the island, what happened after the boat departed, and how he ultimately died. And perhaps most importantly, they want to know whether someone could have prevented his death. Imagine being Nolan's family and hearing that the official cause of death is still undetermined. Imagine knowing that your loved one went out to celebrate a holiday and never came home, while you are left without a clear explanation. That kind of uncertainty can be unbearable. It means the grieving process is mixed with an ongoing search for answers. Every new piece of information brings hope that the truth might finally be revealed. But every delay creates another layer of frustration. And now, with the state autopsy completed and the investigation moving forward, attention is turning toward what happens next. Will the autopsy results finally explain how Nolan died? Will the grand jury uncover evidence that leads to criminal charges? Will the analysis of the distress call reveal something that investigators previously did not know? Or will the case remain one of those mysteries where the truth is buried beneath conflicting accounts and unanswered questions? At this moment, no one outside the investigation can say for certain. What we do know is that Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He went to Horn Island with friends during the 4th of July holiday. He did not return with them. His body was later found near the island. An independent autopsy could not determine exactly how he died. His family has questioned the circumstances and demanded answers. Attorneys and experts have become involved. The official state autopsy has been completed, but its findings have not yet been made public, and the investigation remains active. Everything now depends on what the evidence ultimately reveals. Because behind every headline, every theory, and every unanswered question is a family waiting for the truth about what happened to their son. Nolan Wells should have been looking forward to his future. Instead, his name has become connected to a mystery that continues to unfold. And until investigators provide a definitive explanation, one haunting question will remain at the center of this case. What really happened to Nolan Wells on Horn Island? Was it a tragic accident? Was it a drowning that investigators have been unable to conclusively establish? Or is there another chapter to this story that the public has not yet heard? The answers may eventually come from the autopsy results, the evidence being examined, the distress call, or the grand jury process. But until those answers are revealed, the mystery remains. And for Nolan's family, the search for the truth is far from over.